We've all seen the Schoolhouse Rock video, or at least we pretend like we have. But if we're being honest, this really tells us very little about how a bill works its way through Congress. If you're an American citizen, maybe this is something worth knowing. So just how does a bill really become a law? What differences exist between the House and the Senate? And who is making the decisions along the way? Let's break it down. Getting a bill through Congress is a monumental feat.
My dear Senator, have you the faintest idea what it takes to get a bill passed?
No.
You could spend a lifetime learning the minutiae of House and Senate procedures. But let's make a smaller commitment and just hit the big points, including all the ways a bill can die. Legislation has to start somewhere, and it starts with an idea. An idea for something to work differently. These ideas can come from many places, maybe from a constituent, or from a business, or other group in a member's district. Sometimes from an interest group. They'll bring their idea to their representative or one of their senators. Or it could come internally, from the member of Congress or from his or her staff. Fun fact, if you get nothing else out of this video, it's worth realizing that Capitol Hill isn't really run by these guys. It's run by a massive staff of people in their 20s. The majority of congressional staffers are under 35. So anyway, every member has specific staffers called legislative assistants, each knowledgeable in specific policy areas, and they are overseen by the member's legislative director. An LA will take the idea for a bill and work out what an actual policy should look like. They will then hand it off to the Office of Legislative Counsel, nonpartisan lawyers working for the whole of Congress. The council will take the LA's policy work and write it up as an actual legislative text that can pass legal muster, which is important, but also has drawbacks for normal people.
It's some form of Elvish. I can't read it.
There are few who can.
Now it goes back to the LA, then back to the member, who introduces the bill by filing it with the clerk. This member, the sponsor, will seek out co-sponsors among the other members. This helps show that the bill has support within Congress, and also lets the co-sponsors tell their constituents that they are supporting a policy they care about. From here, the bill will be assigned to whatever committee has jurisdiction over that policy area. But here's the thing, most bills aren't actually intended to go much further than this. They're what are called messaging bills, meaning they're meant to send a message, not really become a law. Maybe the message is to draw attention to an important issue, or maybe it's just so a member can tell their constituents back home that they did something. Maybe the difference depends on your perception of that politician. Who's to say? So the bill arrives at the assigned committee. What if the committee chairman and his staff don't like the bill? Well, then it's dead. Just slid under a stack of papers, never to be seen again. This is the graveyard where most bills die. And frankly, most of them deserved it. But if the committee chairman and staff like the bill, it shall live on. It's also common for bills to originate here. You see, a committee staff is pretty large, and filled with staffers who specialize in their policy field, complete with their own legal counsels to advise on the law. And sometimes, the members of Congress aren't sending them the bills they want to see. So the committee staff will write up a bill all on their own, then hand it off to a member to introduce, and send right back to them. Chances are they will like this bill. Now let's bring in the lobbyists. To be clear, they've already been hanging around, but now that a bill is in committee, they're all paying attention. Lobbying often has a negative connotation with the American people, perhaps deservedly so, but it's by no means an inherently bad thing. It's not just corporations that lobby, it's interest groups, both those that share your interests and those that don't. And it can be just you as a citizen. Lobbying is advocating for or against legislation, and when that's done on the merits of the policy, it's a good thing. It's only when the lobbying involves trading favors or providing financial incentives that the process becomes swampy.
There's some lovely filth down here!
Once members and staffers have received all the input on a bill, maybe held some hearings, the committee will do what's called a markup, where they go through all the amendments that the members have put forward, often from the committee staff, and decide which ones they want to add to the bill. Again, with the assistance of the nonpartisan legislative councils writing the actual language. The committee chair will typically only bother marking up a bill if they know it'll pass committee, so by this point it's a foregone conclusion. After all this, turns out the leadership of both chambers have procedures to skip pretty much all of this process and bring bills straight to the floor. You may see this happen particularly with spending bills, and usually during a self-inflicted emergency, but we'll focus on the official process. So the bill passed committee and is ready to go to the floor, but leadership controls the floor, and if the leadership doesn't like the bill, or simply doesn't see it as enough of a priority, then it's basically dead. While it's technically possible to get around this in both chambers, or even force a bill out of committee, it's a difficult task. In practice, it rarely happens, and it's even more rare for such a bill to pass. But we've come too far to turn back now. So let's say leadership likes this bill. Here we see some notable divergence between the two chambers. Let's start with the Senate.
I am the Senate.
Here, the majority leader brings the bill to the floor for a cloture vote, where the senators must agree to even begin debate on the bill. This also begins the process of introducing even more amendments. Then later, they hold another cloture vote to end debate and prepare to vote on the bill itself. These cloture votes are where we encounter the filibuster you've heard so much about. With a few exceptions, if you don't have at least 60 senators voting for cloture, the vote on the actual bill can't take place, and the bill is effectively dead. But if you get your cloture votes, the process moves forward toward a vote on the bill itself. And at this point, they only need a majority. If the Senate votes no, then once again, the bill is dead. But in most cases, the majority leader will only bring a bill to the floor if they think it can pass. You see, in both chambers, each party has a member of party leadership called the whip. They aren't in charge of corporal punishment, but rather they are charged with keeping members of their party in line and making sure that enough of them plan to vote for or against the bills leadership wants them to. So let's say our bill just passed the Senate. Now let's look at the House. You still have a majority leader, but here you also have the Speaker of the House. They will work in tandem regarding what legislation they want coming to the floor. And anything that goes to the floor first goes through the House Rules Committee, where they decide 1. If the bill will even reach the floor, 2. The rules for how the bill will be debated, and 3. What amendments for members will be allowed to vote on the floor. So with no filibusters in the House, the full House first votes on the rule proposed for the procedure and debate on that particular bill. Votes require a simple majority. The bill might die here, but if the rule passes, then the bill comes to the floor, the curated amendments are voted up or down, and then the House votes on the bill itself. This is another place where it can die, but this bill passes and lives on. Because a bill must pass both chambers in order to become law, somebody might have already started the process on the same or a similar bill over in the other chamber. If not, that may happen now. Or they might just start from the bill that passed the other side. But if the other chamber is less enthusiastic about this bill, then this might be the end of the road. Plenty of bills find success in one chamber, only to die in the other. But this bill makes it all the way through the other chamber. Problem is, with different amendments, it looks different. So what happens now? Well, the traditional process here is that members from both chambers, usually from the committees that passed them in the first place, come together in a conference to argue it out and come to an agreement on what the bill should ultimately look like. Both sides take this new version of the bill back to their chamber, and both chambers vote on the bill again. But today, the more common process looks like ping pong, where each chamber passes their version of the bill and tries to get the other chamber to just sign off on theirs. One way or another, if the two chambers never come to an agreement on passing the exact same bill, the bill is dead. But often at this point, there's enough desire in Congress to get it through. So the bill has passed through Congress. But wait, we're not done. Now it arrives at the desk of the president. If he signs the bill, it becomes law. But if he doesn't like the bill, he might use his veto. This puts it on life support, but the bill is not dead yet. It returns to Congress. If neither chamber, or only one, votes to override the veto, then the bill is dead. But if 2/3 of both chambers, higher numbers than necessary to pass a bill in the first place, vote to override the veto, then it becomes a law in spite of the president. So there you have it, from an idea being birthed to a law being enacted. A bill must make its way through a complex minefield of ways it could die. Most of them don't make it. With how difficult it is for a bill to become a law, it does make you wonder how we end up with so many bad ones. But that's a question for another time.